to us today. We have sixth grade students who have some questions they prepared for you.
Okay, great.
Okay, so here's our first question, our questions for you.
Hi.
Hi.
Okay, when did you start to write books?
Okay, so I started to write books. Let me say this. I started to write when I was around your age. I had always been interested in reading, and I
Hello?
Oh, hi, are you there?
Oh, yep, we're back. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Okay.
So anyway, I started writing my first book, The Meaning of Maggie, when I was probably 28 years old. So old.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
What is your favorite book you've written?
I've only written, well, that's a lie. I've written 1.5 books. I've written one book, The Meaning of Maggie, which is about a little girl named Maggie Mayfield, who is the youngest in her family, and her family is kind of faced with a couple challenges, and Maggie has to kind of grow up really fast. And then I'm currently writing my second book, which is about a little boy named Archie, and he is going on an adventure over the course of the summer between his 7th and 8th grade year. So right now I can only say that Maggie is my favorite because that's my only book I've written.
Oh. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
What inspired you to write books?
So a couple things. One is that not only did I love reading books, I loved watching TV shows. Do you guys like watching TV shows?
Yeah.
And I loved watching movies, and I loved listening to music, and all of those things are written by somebody. So what's your favorite movie?
My favorite movie is probably Creed.
See, now someone wrote that movie. A writer, just like me, a person just like you, sat down in front of a computer or with a pad and paper and wrote that whole story. And so that's really what inspired me. I love that people could do that kind of thing, and it seemed really kind of powerful to me. So that's why I started writing. That's what inspired me.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
Are you having a good day?
I think so. Are you having a good day?
Yes.
Okay, good.
My question is, what is your favorite genre?
My favorite genre is books for you guys. Books for kids who are in middle school, because I think you guys are the coolest. I think you're in the coolest part of your life where you're learning a lot about the world and how it works and your place in it. And I don't like writing stuff for grown-ups because they're really kind of cynical and sad sometimes. And so I like writing books for kids because I think you guys are really hopeful and optimistic and funny and interesting. And that's my answer. Is that a good answer?
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
Where do you get your ideas from?
So I get my ideas from a number of places. I'm sure you guys have a lot of ideas. You have big imaginations, I'm sure. Sometimes ideas just come to me. Sometimes they're through reading. Something a writing teacher told me that really stuck with me once was that you should read more than you write, because reading fills this well inside your head and lets you kind of learn without actively thinking about it how people talk to each other, how scenes work out, how plots develop. And so the more you read, the more that becomes a part of your brain. And so when you sit down to write, it's a lot easier to put thoughts together because you've read so much and you know so much. It's just like studying for any kind of test, right? So you memorize different facts. And then some of them stick with you. And that's the same thing when you read a lot. When you sit down to write, those kind of things come back into your brain and light up. And so, yeah, is that a good answer?
Yeah, thank you. How did you have the idea of writing the book, The Meaning of Maggie?
So The Meaning of Maggie is actually based on my life growing up. So Maggie is kind of, while it's based on my life, it's not completely autobiographical. So there are things that happened in the book that happened to me and my family, but I kind of went back and creatively wrote them so they'd make a really good story that I thought that people could connect with. And so when I was your age, my dad had multiple sclerosis, which is a kind of scary disease. And he had worked my whole life, and then he had to stop working, and he became a stay-at-home dad. And my mom, who had always stayed at home with us, she went to work. And so it's this big change in our family, and so many things happened. And I ended up really getting to know my dad, and we had a lot of fun together. And so I always thought it would make an interesting book because it was such a cool time in my life. So yeah.
And also, did anybody else in your family write books?
No one in my family writes books. My sisters are both dancers, and they both are really into fitness, and they teach all kinds of classes that have to do with that. My mom was a housekeeper in a hotel, and then she worked her way up to be a manager of her housekeeping department. And my dad had worked for Delta Airlines as a cashier, which I don't even think they have anymore. So no one wrote, and I always felt kind of like the outsider in my family because I had this big interest in this kind of thing that was interesting and creative, and no one else did, but they were really supportive of it. And every time I wrote something, my dad would read it, and I always felt like I knew I would always have an audience as long as they were around. So yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
What are some tips you have about writing a children's book?
I would, if you want to write a book or anything, I would start thinking, one, what's a good story, in like a quick one sentence, what's a good story? Like what's Frozen about? It's about two sisters and they embark on this kind of journey together. So that's an interesting kind of story to tell. But more importantly, think about your characters and who are some characters who you really, really like, not just in fiction and different movies and stories, but who are characters you know in your real life. Like my sister, Raina, is a tap dancer. And she tap dances all the time. She'll tap dance in the kitchen, or she'll tap dance in the driveway. And it's always been something that she just did. And so as I was writing this book based on my family, the character started tap dancing. And I feel like it really, when you put real life qualities into your fictional characters, they really make them more human and you can connect with them more. So if I was going to write a book for kids and I were you, I would start by thinking of some interesting characters. Cool?
Yeah.
All right. Hi.
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 I have a question for you.
Yes.
What character traits do you think all main characters should have?
I think your main character should be both lovable and hateable. So you want someone who feels real. So you want someone who you're rooting for, and they have these lovable qualities where they try really hard and they're very tenacious and they're very smart in the way that they think about things, and they're interesting in the way they ask questions. But you also want a character that has some flaws. My main character, Maggie, can be very immature. She can also be kind of a know-it-all. And so sometimes you're not rooting for her because you just want her to kind of grow up, but at the same time, she'll do something that's funny, or she'll do something that's very sincere, or she'll say something that you hadn't really thought of before, and then all of a sudden you love her again. So I think when you're thinking of a main character, you need to think of both sides of them, the good and the bad, and how those two pieces of them will go together. Does that sound good? Mm-hmm. All right.
Hi.
Hi.
So, which step of the writing process was the hardest for you when you were writing The Meaning of Maggie?
I have to say, writing's really hard. And I think the hardest part of it is that it's lonely. Because you're sitting on a computer, or you're sitting and writing on a piece of paper, and you're all by yourself with your thoughts. And a book, The Meaning of Maggie, is 220 pages long. And so I'd write those pages all by myself. So I'd have to say that that's kind of the hardest part for me is the writing process, is that it can be kind of lonely. Luckily, I have a really cool family, and I have a 19-month-old daughter who keeps me busy. And so it's good to keep yourself around people. I would say the other hardest part when it came to writing was really writing the last few chapters, because I had spent so much time with these characters. And even though I knew how it would end, I didn't really know how I would feel about it once it ended. And so it was really hard to write those last few pages kind of saying goodbye to these people I had spent so long with.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
How do you come up with characters in your stories?
So what I do is that I first think about who these people are and I give them names, even if I don't know them very well yet. And then I sit down and write down all the things that I think that one person would like, even if they're things or dislike, even if they're things that never make it into the story. So with Maggie, I knew that she was really smart and funny, but why was she so funny? And I would write different jokes that she would think was funny. And I would write about, she was really into history, and I would talk about who were her heroes in history. Were they Eleanor Roosevelt and Abraham Lincoln and Rosa Parks? And then I would think, well, what would she like to eat? So this is a girl who likes food, right? So I would think she loves peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and she loves sweets and cookies and all kinds of good stuff. And then I would go through and write all these things down for her, and then I would start with my second character. So I would start with her dad and think, okay, he's funny. Why is he funny? Well, he's funny because he thinks he's really always the smartest guy in the room. And then I would write down, what does he like to eat? What music does he like to listen to? Who is his favorite best friend? Different things that kind of make these people more whole. And then as I was writing, I would reference these big sheets of character traits and weave them into the story as I went along. Does that sound good?
Yeah, thank you.
That's a long answer. Sorry.
Hi.
Hi.
If you were to write a children's book, how many words would you put on a page?
Well, I think, I don't know how many words Maggie is. I know that it's 220 pages, and that's actually not that long. A lot of children's books are a lot longer. Harry Potter is like really long. And a lot of other books are really long. I felt like when I was sitting down to write Maggie that the story would kind of tell me where it needed to go. And so while I had an outline of the different things that I wanted to happen, I really just let the writing kind of tell me how long it would be. And then when I was done, it was 220 pages, and that felt right. So I think as long as you have a good beginning and you start with a problem that your main character has and you feel like that they can solve it by the end of the book, the rest of it will kind of fill itself in. Does that sound good?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi again.
Hi.
So that was all the questions we had for you. Thank you.
How are the answers? Okay?
You guys think?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Do you have any questions for us?
Yeah, I want to know what you guys are reading.
Ooh, good question. Let me see if I have a volunteer to come up and tell you what they're reading.
Okay.
Hello.
Hello.
Well, I am right now reading Augie and Me.
Oh, that's a great book.
I know. I'm almost done with it.
Uh-huh.
Like one chapter left. And I'm actually planning to read next The Meaning of Maggie.
Well, good. I'm glad. Have you read Wonder?
I have.
Have all of you guys read Wonder?
Yeah.
It's a great book. That's one of my favorite books. I think I have it on my bookshelf back here. What I love so much about Wonder is that you put a picture in your head of what you think Augie looks like, right?
Yeah.
And so the whole time, every single one of you probably has a different image of what he looks like. And I bet in every single one of those images, he's very kind. And I bet he has really kind eyes. And I bet that he is just kind of someone who is a lot more like you than dislike you and then unlike you. And so that's why I love that book so much. So I'm so glad you guys read that book. What other favorite books have you read?
Thank you.
Thank you.
The book that I'm reading now is called So Be It. But
Uh-huh.
the book that I read before that was The Meaning of Maggie.
What did you think of The Meaning of Maggie?
I really liked it.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. It took a long time to write, so I'm so glad that there are kids out there reading it. Thank you. What else? Who else is reading something cool?
We actually read this as a class, The Breadwinner.
Oh, yeah, The Breadwinner. That's a great book. Did you like it?
Yeah, it was very heart-racing, and
Yeah. Yeah, it's really, books like that really are page turners, you know? So you start reading it and then you can't put it down. And those books, it's funny. I don't write those kind of books, and so I appreciate it so much when people do write those kind of books, because I think it takes a certain amount of pacing to really keep up with kids' imaginations. And so I always like those kind of stories. Well, that's really cool. Does anyone in the class want to be a writer when they grow up? Yeah. Do you guys have any writerly questions? Yeah.
Hi again.
Hi. Again.
Well, my question is, when you're introducing the characters in the beginning, do you want to put the most interesting character first, the least interesting character first, or put them both at the beginning?
I think it depends on what point of view you're writing from. So Maggie is in the first person. So Maggie is on every single page. And so while I don't know if she's the most important character, she's the one telling the story. And so you have to get to know her the most. I think other books that are told from a different perspective, you kind of have to decide who's going to move the story along the best and who's going to introduce the problem. And who's going to kind of set up the story, because those first few pages are so important, because you don't know who anybody is and you don't know what's going to happen, and you kind of need to know, you need something to kind of hook you as a reader to make you want to keep reading it. So I would just say introduce the first character who can kind of set that up the best, and who kind of is the most connected to it. What else? Anybody else? Any other questions? You guys are asking really good questions. You guys are really smart. I like it. Yeah. Hi.
I have a question about writing. Do you have to, does the main character have to be the one, who is like the first, if it's first person, does the main character have to be the one who's actually like talking?
Oh, narrating it? I don't think so. And I can't think of an example off the top of my head. Maybe your teacher can. But I think that the narrator sometimes, if it's not first person, is somebody you don't know. Is sometimes just someone who's kind of telling the story from a kind of all-knowing perspective, right? And so I think that as long as you know who that narrator is and where they're going to take the story, you can kind of start it any way you want to. The book I'm writing now, that is not anything like Maggie, really, is written from a narrator. And when I sat down to do my character studies, I had to write down who the narrator was and why were they telling this story and where did they come from and what was their perspective and why were they connected to it. Even though you never know that person's name and you never really know where they came from or why they are a part of it, you still need to know all these pieces that make them care about it. And so, yeah, that's my answer. Is that confusing?
It's so good. Thank you.
Okay, good.
Hello.
Hi.
One of my questions I have you ever read The Martian? Because that's what I'm reading right now.
No, I haven't, but I've heard it's great. Is it really good?
It's pretty interesting so far, and I'm gonna see the movie once I'm done reading it.
Yeah. I think what's so cool about writing is that if you set out to be a writer, you can be 12 different kinds of writers. So when I started writing, I was going to be a poet, and I thought I was going to write poetry. And then I went to college, and I thought I was going to be a poet in college. And then I decided you can't make any money being a poet. That's not a job outside of the 1800s. And so I had to change what I wanted to do. And so I actually went into advertising. And so for 10 years, I wrote commercials. And I wrote commercials for Nintendo, and I wrote commercials for Pop-Tarts and for all kinds of different things. And then I decided while I was writing commercials that I wanted to write this book. And so I've really been a poet, a copywriter for advertising, and an author. And what's cool about the guy who wrote The Martian is that he wrote The Martian and then it got adapted into a screenplay. And so then he was probably a part of that, became a screenwriter, and then who knows what else he'll do. So when you're a writer, you can be like a bunch of different kinds of writers. So I think that's what's cool about writing.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. Hi.
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 Have you ever read Because of Mr. Turrup?
No, I haven't. What's that one about?
So there's like this teacher, Mr. Turrup, and then there's like all these other characters that are in his class, and then like this really bad thing happens in the class, and they all get through it together.
Do you like the book?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you guys are finding books that you like to read. There's so much stuff out there. I'm glad that you're finding things that you really connect with.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Anything else? Yeah.
Okay, it's me again.
Oh, hi.
Okay, so I think we're almost out of time. So
Okay.
I want to thank you so much.
Yes, thank you guys so much. You have great questions. Thank you.
And maybe we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, I'll see you soon, okay, at 1:30, right?
Yes,
Or
12:30.
12:30.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. All right, bye, guys. Thank you so much.